So this short video aims to give people some idea of who I am, what I'm about, what I do as a therapeutic and spiritual life coach. So, I'm hoping to make this 10 minutes or so. So I help people to understand, looking at my notes here, I help people to understand the human journey through life, of how we come into the world as an expression of the pure divine source of energy itself, that loving divine source energy. But because the world isn't as safe as it could be, let's say, we then end up going into a psychologically functioning phase, what people often refer to as an egoic phase, an adaptive phase, where that pure self, it's like it goes into an egg, an ego, as the yolk, and gradually becomes the chick until it can hatch. So we go into this egoic phase, this psychologically functioning phase, and we function out of that so as to get our needs met to survive. And in that part of life, that phase of life, which is about managing the world, awakening, surviving, fitting into the culture, the tribe, etc., which is partly why we come in innocent, so we can adapt to our individual kind of tribe, culture, societies, etc. When we're there, we tend to function more, where we learn to function cognitively, rationally, intellectually, etc. So we can figure out how to play the moment to our best survival understanding or probability, the chance of surviving, feeling safe, feeling secure, etc. But then as we get towards, I'll say midlife, but it's happening earlier and earlier nowadays. Some people in the late 20s are beginning to go into this awakening phase. We begin to come out the other side of it and return towards being able to be the true pure self that we are, rather than this adapted, psychologically functioning self that we are. So that's the work I do from that understanding that I've done. So I did a master's degree in psychospiritual psychology from 2006 through to 2011, I think, in London, because of my own awakening to all of this and my own disturbances and need to understand it. So this is what I'm offering here, is on the foundation of my own training, and those trainings are done through Middlesex University in London, and various other trainings I did as a consequence. So with that understanding and realization, the work that I do is help people with that return phase, out of the egoic phase of functioning, that realignment phase of life, because that realignment phase causes us disturbance as we're hearing mixed messages. At one time, we only heard one set of messages that were all based on staying safe, surviving, getting our needs met. We're now hearing mixed messages about how we should behave, in contrast to the way that we've become conditioned into behaving. So there is that calling, that urge that we feel, that spiritual kind of calling to be our true self, that begins to happen and cause us that disturbance. So we're getting pulled in two directions. One I refer to as a kind of self-survival phase, another one self-fulfillment phase, and they're both trying to serve us, but they're kind of working against each other. And of course, we do need to survive in each and every moment in order to get to a chance where we can be our true self. So the self-survival mode tends to take priority, or else we can't do the self-fulfillment, the self-realization. We can't be our true self if we don't survive. So how do I help people then to move from the psychologically functioning way to the psychospiritually functioning level? Because it's trying to happen anyway, and it's happening whether you're aware of it or not, and it's happening despite your resistances. It will drag you through a hedge backwards because that's what life's about. That's what, to be the pure true self that we are, but to get through the survival phase and out the other side, if the world isn't a safe enough place for us to remain pure in the first instance, which would be the ideal. So I'm helping people to align with what's happening to them anyway. But most of us are ignorant of the fact that this is what's happening because we're not living in a society that gives us a psychospiritual education. So to some extent, it's to help you with what's going on in your life, what life's about, but also bring you more peace and contentment by aligning with this process that's happening to you, so that you're working with it instead of probably fighting against it. Now, the ways in which I help you with that is by firstly evidencing what it is that I'm offering. So helping you to reflect on your own life, your own story, and see that what I'm offering makes sense here, so that you genuinely get on board with what I'm offering here. And also seeing that that's what happens for other people. You can pick up your life and put it in this box, or the life of other people and put it in this box. You begin to see it everywhere, that this is what's happening and what's going on. And so you're genuinely, truly in alignment with what I'm offering here. You see it yourself. So you have the knowledge, the enlightenment, the education, which satisfies your mind. That part of you that begins to say, okay, I could dip my toe in this water and see where it goes. So then I also help you by helping you to see the difference between psychologically functioning or psychological functioning and psychospiritual functioning. So in psychological functioning, the soul, psyche or soul, is in alignment with and kind of being guided by logic and reason and thought and intellect, measuring the situation, figuring out the best way to interact, behave, etc. Whereas with psychospiritual functioning, you're aligned more with the spirit of life, which is a higher, wiser guidance than the closed egoic survival type system. What else have I got here? Understanding that this psychological functioning phase isn't bad or wrong or evil or all these things that we hear. It's just how it is. We have to come into the world, go into a chameleon-like adaptive phase to get to the point where we feel secure enough to come out the other side. And that's different for everybody, depending on their scenario, situation, story, etc. So there's nothing bad, wrong, whatever about any of this. It's just how it is. So then I also work with people in two ways, one-to-one and small group. And we work with what is emergent for you. So I'm not going to go through a set of things that I'm going to teach you, because it's your higher guidance that's actually leading. Your higher guidance takes you into this earlier developmental phase to get you to survive, to get you into adulthood, to get you ready to feel secure so that you can awaken to the truth of who and what you are, that pure divine essence itself. So it's about me then helping you with whatever's emergent for you, because your higher self, if we want to call it that, that's what it's offering up for you as a disturbance into consciousness, so that you can look at it and reframe it, look at it differently from the way that you perhaps looked at it in childhood and understood it in childhood and built a story around it in childhood, all unconsciously. So I want to re-emphasize that again, that it's your disturbance that we follow, because that way we're following your higher guidance. Now, in addition to that, we work in small groups, and that can be 4 to maybe 8, 10 people. I don't tend to work in bigger groups than that because people don't tend to get enough space and the space isn't intimate enough. And the reason for working in small groups is so that we can practice being in small societies where we help each other, where people are there for the same purpose. And we learn from them and they learn from us, but we also create a loving, safe container environment, like a small family, where we can learn to open and share and be vulnerable, etc., and be held. And when everybody's there from this understanding, you can genuinely be loving, caring, understanding, forgiving, compassionate, because you get how difficult it is for us all as we come into the world and go through this phase and reawaken in the struggle, and how hard it is to come out the other side when we've got all of these resistances holding us back, and resistances that are kind of saying, don't do anything different from this way because this is what's helped you to survive so far. And don't do something that's vulnerable, painful, etc. But that is the way forward, the way out of it. So these are kind of spiritual practice groups that are kind of grounded, present, pragmatic, embodied, and working with whatever that higher guidance is offering up for transformation within us. So we're following that guidance despite the ego's kind of resistance, let's call it. And so we're all holding each other in that space. So finally then, what is the difference between psychologically functioning and psychospiritually functioning? So I've just scribbled a few things down here. In general, the psychologically functioning phase is more about fear, and the psychospiritually more about love. Psychological, again, is more about a way of functioning because we're ignorant of what's going on, and psychospiritually, a more informed way. So psychological functioning, as I've said earlier, is more to do with listening to your head and reason and thought and intellect to figure out the best way to play the moment. It's a survival phase. So the things I've scribbled down here for psychological functioning would be being logical and rational, being caught up in beliefs, old programs. So this is like running on, say, Windows 95 program, or even earlier, back into the days of just MS-DOS, before Windows even came out. We're running on old operating systems from early childhood, instead of them being upgraded into the likes of Windows 95, for instance, for Windows users. So we've got mindsets and maintaining cycles, and we project things onto other people, and we operate out of maintaining cycles that help keep us where we are, keep us feeling safe. There's all sorts of psychological language in here that psychotherapists use to do with transference and counter-transference, etc. And neuroses, where we behave a certain way because we're concerned about what other people will think of us or what we might think of ourselves. We don't want to be seen to show up a certain way. We have materialistic values, coping mechanisms. We tend to be more judgmental, resentful, defensive, kind of closed, not letting people in, self-protective, avoid vulnerability, avoid our feelings, even feeling them, never mind expressing them. We tend to live in a more blame type culture within ourselves. Can often dissociate, disappear, check out of ourselves if an experience becomes too difficult for us. Can live in a more aloof way, self-righteous way. Tend to be more reactive than proactive, and have more materialistic purpose, meaning, and value, which is okay. It's part of the development. So then for the psychospiritual functioning, it's more about sensing and feeling and being embodied and being present, being mindful in every moment of what's actually going on, and seeking to do something productive. So we're more meditative and contemplative, more caring, compassionate. We tend to become more as I say, caring, compassionate, loving, forgiving, understanding, sympathetic, because we do understand what's going on and we can see the other person caught in the same journey, the same struggle. So we are genuinely, rather than just listening to some voice in our head that says we should be more loving, forgiving, compassionate, we genuinely are, in truth. Because we are also more accepting of a higher wisdom and guidance that's at play, that guided us into that psychologically functioning phase and is now guiding us back out of it. As I say, there's nothing wrong, it's just how it has to be. But we're more aligned with following that and having faith in that than following the closed system that helped us to survive so far. So we become more self-aware and more proactive than reactive. We often follow our heart over our head, not all the time, and it's not wise to do it all the time. We've become more intuitive and develop more spiritual purpose, meaning, and value than the materialistic spiritual purpose and meaning. Now, this is more for people, the clients I have are more females, more women, and the typical age group is probably from about 40 to 70. Although there's a few younger, and I've been doing this work since about 2008, and there are a lot of people that are early retired, part retired, or in full retirement that have no sense of purpose, meaning, and value. And it's because this is what they're meant to be doing. But we're not living in a society that teaches us a psychospiritual education, that teaches us about how life is, what's going on, how it works, in the simple way I have. And so without that wisdom out there, we don't have elderly people out there that are the wise old man, wise old woman, village elder, etc., because society's not helping to create that. And that's part of the opportunity here, is to do your own work here and then help others, and as part of that then also help society and humanity in general to understand what's going on. So finally, I would also say that this for me is the true realignment, the true religion that goes on, the religion that goes on in life. It doesn't matter whether we're religious, like theistic, atheistic, agnostic, doesn't matter. It happens anyway, and I know that it happened to me without being interested in any of that stuff. Just running my joinery kind of builder's carpentry business, and I still do a bit of that. And then getting to a point where I did feel secure. Got the wife, kids, mortgage, pensions, all of that stuff, and then asking the bigger questions of life and being invited to awaken to a whole new level that caused me a lot of disturbance and mental health issues and complete crashes and breakdowns. And it's essentially midlife crisis and spiritual awakening. And it's not something going wrong in your life, it's something trying to awaken you, it's something trying to go right. And so, as I say, this for me is the true religion, the true alignment that happens and is meant to happen, and we become religious beings the moment in early childhood when we aren't able to just be our pure innocent truth, and we have to begin to function kind of logically, rationally in this survival mode. We become misaligned, and then the religion is the realignment. So hopefully that's given you some insight into who I am, what I'm about. I've probably rushed through this a bit too quickly. May not give you a feel for how I do the work, because the way I work is mostly from my body and my heart, and sensing and feeling the truth of what's really going on in someone. And that may be what they're bringing into the space, and it may be what I can now sense going on in the background of what they're actually bringing to the space, because most of what we bring into a space and share is symptomatic, and there's the cause that lies behind it of what's really trying to happen, and that's what I help people with. So this will be going on for you, that's a fact. If you're younger, it may not be there yet, depending on your own lifestyle, conditioning, several factors, you may not. But for the masses, this is what's going on. This is also what's causing all sorts of addictions and mental health crises and disorders, depressions, anxieties. We're not living the truth of who and what we are. And that's what I'm about. It's what I'm trained in. It's what I'm good at. And by all means, get in touch, give me a shout. We can have a chat and see where it goes. Thank you. Bye now.